Hi guys, my name is Charlie, and today I'm going to be going over some basic mastering tips. This video will be focusing on the EQ side of things, and part 2 will be covering compression. So with EQ, whether you're in a mastering context or not, there are broadly speaking two different types of EQ plugins that you can use. One is the parametric style surgical EQ, which is generally used to remove or add very specific frequencies without changing the overall character of the track, and analog style emulations, which usually aim to recreate the sonic characteristics of existing pieces of hardware. So let's dive in here. Quickly, just before I start, the track I'm using for this demo is from a solo album I released a few years ago. The track is called Time to Die, and the track here in Pro Tools is the unmastered version of the song. Usually the first thing to do when mastering is any kind of surgical EQ that's going to be needed to remove any nasty frequencies or sub-buildup. You're almost always going to have to do at least something, even if it is just a high pass. But as with any processing, particularly in mastering, you should only do it if the track needs it. Don't just go removing certain frequencies for no reason or because I did it with this particular track. If you mix the track yourself, then you can also go back to the mix and fix any problem areas. But if you are mastering for someone else, then of course this will likely not be an option. So let's have a play with a couple of surgical EQs. The two that I find myself using most often are the Ozone 8 EQ and the Slate Infinity EQ. So what we're going to do here is add a high pass filter and remove any nasty frequencies that I don't really like. So with the Ozone EQ, if you hold down the Option key on your keyboard, as I was doing just there, you can isolate and listen to the exact frequency that your bandwidth is set to. So as you can see there, the moves that I've made have been very subtle, which usually is going to be the case with mastering. So now let's have a go at doing the same or similar things with the Slate Infinity EQ. So I'm going to bypass the Ozone, and we're just going to see how the workflow is a little bit different with the Infinity EQ. So in order to select a band, you have to click this button here and then go high pass here. And then selecting the slope is it's definitely more finicky than it is in the Ozone plugin, but it does have this button here, which definitely improves the workflow versus the Ozone plugin because it allows you to sweep and listen to everything below where you're currently high passing. So there you go. As you can see, I've done similar processing with two very similar plugins. There's not any point in me A/Bing them to see what they sound like because they sound essentially identical. The reason to choose a plugin for this purpose is usually just based on your workflow preferences. So what I'll usually do next is apply some mastering compression, but I'm going to be covering that in the next video. So for now, I'm just going to move on to adding some flavor EQ to really help get the mix to where I want it to be. The two plugins that I love for this kind of thing are the Mag EQ4 and the Ozone 8 Vintage EQ. You may notice here that both of these plugins are notched, which means that they're not parametric, which can really help the workflow, even though it might sound as though it's somewhat limiting. So the Ozone 8 Vintage EQ is based on two different Pultec EQs, and it's great because it allows you to cut and boost the same frequencies to get some very natural sounding results, particularly with the low end. So you can see there that if I set this band to 60 Hertz, it's boosting in kind of a shelf at around about 60 Hertz. And then the cut is definitely higher up than 60 Hertz. What you can do as well, just to get a better feel for exactly what these settings are doing, is set them all the way up to 10, and then just click through them. And then you can kind of see the curves. So they're not the same. Like the 60 band isn't the same as the 100, but down at 60. They do definitely have different characters to them. And the Mag EQ4 is based on the Mag Audio 500 series EQ module, and where this plugin really shines, I think, is in the top end. The air band here goes all the way up to 40 kilohertz, which is, of course, way above what we can hear, but because of the shape of the EQ curve, it does affect audible frequencies in a very pleasing, smooth way. So let's have a play with that. So anyway, this was a quick look at EQing in a mastering context using some of my favorite plugins. Hopefully you've been able to see some ways that these tools can be used to polish off your master and get some great sounding results in no time. Anyway, that brings us to the end of part 1. Part 2 will be covering mastering compression tips. I hope you found this video useful and informative. Please let us know what you think in the comments. Be sure to check out the Brickwall Sounds website and sign up to our newsletter for cool things like discount codes and blogs. And you can also find us on Facebook and Instagram, and we will see you soon.